Being a quorum president of the Tewksbury Planning Board, to bring this meeting to order. First item that I'd like to address is the phone number for anybody who would like to call in. The number is 978-771-0819. We will announce that through the evening. So if you didn't catch it this time, I'll do it again, and then we should be all set. 978-771-0819. The first item on the agenda, approval of the minutes of October 26, 2020.
I make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the minutes.
We have a second?
Second.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. Mr. Delaney? Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Fattalia?
Aye.
Mr. Ryder, and the chair votes aye. Next item on the agenda, committee reports, administrative actions. Anybody have any committees to report?
No, sir.
Well,
Mr. Chairman.
okay, thank you. I just, not part of the zoning bylaw subcommittee. We had a meeting last Tuesday, and we were discussing sidewalks, and then a couple of the selectmen are trying to get together with members of the planning board, not all of us, but to find out what things we would like to do for sidewalks. Well, we know I explained to them that we had already started it, but if they would like to be part of it, if not lead this, so we can get more bang for our buck. I guess in a conversation that we had, we were going to probably use what funds we have somewhere on Main Street so we can tie one or two things areas together. But that's topic for another day. I just want to let you know that the selectmen are interested in this too. Any questions on that? Hearing none. Thank you. I like the shake of the head, Steve. That's good. Next item on the agenda, town planners report. Mr. McGinty.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I have one item. It was 2230 Main Street. You got a copy of it all in your packets. So it's just a follow-up to Mr. Johnson's question from last week. So I can answer any questions.
All right. Mr. Johnson?
No questions. It's pretty straightforward. Apparently, if they don't hold some permit beyond a foundation permit, the filing can't happen. So until they do that, it remains in limbo.
Right. Right. Anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a
How
question
long-
if I could.
Yeah,
So when does it start to count? What has to happen? Completion, occupancy, or what?
It sounds like from what's there, it's that they just need whatever permit would be pulled after a foundation permit.
Which is the frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
so when they start to frame it, we get the credit?
You can file the paperwork.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe that's correct.
Yep.
All
right.
They just specifically called out that foundational permits don't count as a building permit.
Okay.
Mhm.
Very good. Well, thank you.
So Ms. McGinty, are we going to be involved in that at all as far as the town of Tewksbury?
In terms of submitting the paperwork,
Yes. Or is that
I
something
believe-
they're doing themselves?
so I believe Mr. Sadwick, if he would like to speak to that, could.
I'll be filing the paperwork.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yep.
Oh. Everybody got that?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, good. Next item on the agenda, Robbie Terms. Oh, that's it, Anna? That was it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that was it
All
for
right.
the town planners report.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next item on the agenda, Robbie Terrace Way, bond release and as-built acceptance. This was on our agenda last week, but the thing is missing. Where do we stand now?
It's discontinued.
So Mr. Chairman, if I may
Yes,
give an update. So we were contacted by the consultant this morning, requesting to continue to the November 16th meeting.
okay,
Because the DPW needs some more time to review the application. There's still some outstanding items.
all right.
So they'd like to continue it to the 7 o'clock time for November
Yep.
16th.
Very
Could I
good.
ask a question, please?
Go ahead.
With
Mr.
that Robbie's Way, we got a letter, quite lengthy from the lawyer explaining is that normal practice for us to get that? Or should we have our own town council advise us on what they're talking about? In other words, it sounds to me like somebody has dropped the ball with this thing, and we got the whole lawyer's description of in and out, but it didn't really mean that much to me when I read it. I didn't know what the hell they were talking about.
Mr. Cuco,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
you have any answers for that? I thought you were involved in this.
Yeah, I don't see how it's related to what we're doing.
Well, there's still some information that the DPW needs, so. it's still
Yeah,
gonna-
this is a very busy time of year for DPW, so we understand that there's been a little bit of a delay, and that's why we heard for continuing because
I
can't
remember.
put this on for street acceptance till May. But
Right,
we'll wait.
right.
As the other stuff goes, I see how that's an issue with the planning board. But my client is meeting with their legal counsel tomorrow to see what.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Cuco. We have a motion to continue this till November 16th.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a second?
Second,
I'm looking for my calendar here. Anna, do you have a time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So that would be 7 o'clock,
All right.
as it's an administrative action.
Okay,
And
Right.
there's nothing, we have 3 other administrative actions, but it'll still be at 7 o'clock.
okay. Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda, yes?
Do we need to poll the board, or was that all
Oh.
set?
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Delaney,
aye.
Mr. Vinnie,
Aye.
Mr.
Right.
I'm not sure
Aye.
if he's here. Oh, you are here.
Yes, I
Okay,
am.
I was looking, I
Yep.
didn't know if you stepped away, Eric. All right.
Okay, no, I'm here.
Just for whoever wasn't here when I said this before, Eric did. Eric is going to be doing something off camera, and he might not be able to be available for a few minutes. So that's, if we have to, we'll do that. And the chair votes aye. Next item on the agenda, 300 Ames Pond Drive, land disturbance permit extension.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dick Hugo here. On behalf of the clients, the 300 Drive, request planning to modify the land disturbance permit. I started work done, and then COVID-19 outbreak hit us all. It hampered the business operations a little bit over the past 7 months. So the project is a bit behind. And we're hoping to set it up again. The winter isn't too bad or in the springtime, but we were having some correspondence back and forth with Mr. Chadwick, and we realized the size couldn't be completed in a year. If you remember the project at St. Mary's,
Right.
that took about 3 years. We didn't want to do it all in a year because promised you that we would try to keep truck traffic.
Okay,
So if we did it, you know, 1 year period, we would be able to keep that commitment. And we, you know, we worked with you for pretty hard. So that's why we're requesting the to be extended 3 years from today.
well, I didn't know if you would want to toll the time that's already expended with no work because of the corona, or if you wanted to have a time certain, or if 3 years is a motion by the board, that'd be fine also.
So yeah, that would see us, you know, the permit 3 years from today.
Okay,
Yeah, 6 months, but we'll hope it can happen again. Like I said, we don't want to overburden the truck traffic there.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Kuko. Board member, do we have a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 3-year extension as requested by the applicant.
We have a second.
Second.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Vitalia.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next item on the agenda, 913 East Street. Francesca, I guess that's how you say it, Land LLC, site plan special permit. We have a motion to waive the reading of the public notice.
So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Do we have, Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
Mr. Vitalia?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. I see James Hanley here. Are you discussing this, James?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Very good. Go
Good.
right, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here if that's possible.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to share my screen. if
Sure,
that's okay.
absolutely, absolutely.
Right. Okay, so this. Okay, I believe you see the site in front of you right now?
Yep.
Okay, so this is where we are. Jim Hanley with Civil Design Consultants. I'm here on part of Francesca Land LLC, which is managed currently by Joe Germano Cataldo, who's also part of the meeting here tonight. He's online as well. I believe we have a fairly straightforward application, and I'm going to run through that now. So 913 East Street, this is the site that is kind of the blue triangle here. You can see where we are on East Street. To the south of it, directly to the south of it, is the existing railroad bed with a railroad line. And then across the street, a corner, is Carter Street and Lumber Lane. What we're in front of you tonight is for a site plan special permit for the construction of a building in excess of 800 square feet. So really just kind of want to walk you through the site, talk about our proposal, and then kind of tell you where we stand in the process. So again, we're at 913 East Street. It is zoned heavy industrial zoning district. We have about 516 feet of frontage along East Street. We have a lot area of just over an acre, about 1.1 acres. Most of the site is completely developed either between the detention basin located in the, I guess that would be the southwest corner, the left-hand corner, or parking or access or building. It's predominantly developed. It's about 75% of the site that is impervious surface right now. We don't have any wetlands on the site. There's 2 existing buildings. There's 2 existing freestanding buildings. The first is, I'm kind of zooming here a little bit. The first is this 1,320 square foot building. And then behind that, there's an existing 2,250 square foot plus or minus garage. This garage here is actually a pre-existing non-conforming structure to the current zoning that it's just too close to that rear sideline. So this is the applicant's intent, and essentially it's to take the 2,250 square foot building and add about a 7,000 square foot building addition that runs down in parallel with the property. So what does our proposal consist of here? It's, again, pretty straightforward. This is the site plan that we put together. Essentially what we have is the building addition here, and then simply making provision for drainage, because of course where we put the building addition would sit on some of the existing closed drainage pipe network that's out there. So in its entirety, it is a building addition. The building addition is actually allowed through the issuance of a variance that was issued by the Board of Appeals in May of this year. And that was to, again, this rear yard setback. We've got about 9 feet on one side and about 10 feet on the other side. In addition to that, we have some minor utility improvements just to service the proposed building addition. We have the drainage that we need, we know we need to do. We got some comments from DPW, so we have to add some additional detail with regard to the water services, as well as sewer services, showing oil and grit separators for the floor drains that will be in the garage. So at the end of the day, it's a 6,950 square foot building addition. We're going to maintain the existing use, heavy industrial tractor garages. We're going to maintain all of the existing parking lot and access ways along the site. So where we stand, we got a letter from the planning department last week, Thursday or Friday of last week. She had some comments relative to zoning. None of the items we have we don't take any exception with any of the items. I think I would like to ask the board to maybe provide some insight on a couple of our comments as we kind of move through this tonight, specifically a landscaping plan and a lighting plan and a master signage plan. And I can talk a little bit more about that, but essentially, the site is already developed from previously, and this application really is specific to the building addition. So I just kind of wanted to get the board's thoughts on that, as well as we got a review letter from DPW last week as well. Again, we don't take any issue or exception with any of this stuff. We're going to kind of work through the process over the next week or so, get a set of revised plans, and then clean it up and hopefully get it done. The last item to note is that we have I have a conference call scheduled with DPW and conservation tomorrow. There's actually a wetland that doesn't show up on the town maps. That's located in this general area here. Again, it's on the opposite side of the railroad tracks, but we will be within 100 feet. The building will probably be somewhere about 75-ish feet out. So we're going to talk to DPW, conservation, get on the same page tomorrow, and then we'll move forward the revisions to the plan set to get there. With that being said, that's kind of the overview. So if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Henley. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I mean, you got a couple of things that you guys are still gonna have to take care of.
Yep.
Otherwise, we're not gonna finish this up. But
Right.
just run me through. Like, I understand it sounds like it's right, but so you have the building that's there now is currently pre-existing non-conforming,
Yes.
and the variance you have covers the new portion that you want to attach to the building, correct?
Yes.
But we're not, by having it actually attached to the building, we're not increasing the non-conformity of the building that's there, that's grandfathered?
Mr. Chairman, Chico here, I can answer that. While we were in front of the zoning board, we also asked them to do a finding on that. So that we had dotted all our i's and crossed all our t's. So you're right, Mr. Johnson, the variance is for the new building, and then we had a finding that the existing building would not be more detrimental to the neighborhood than what's already there now.
Because that, I mean, I think that would have been hanging out there if it didn't get mentioned.
And that was kind of brought up at the zoning board. They said, well, why do you need that? And I said, because someday we have to get a building permit if we're successful with the planning board. And I didn't want to have that as a stumbling block. So we had addressed that early on.
Okay. Yeah, otherwise, I mean, I don't care about that. I mean, I'm fine with what you want to do there as long as that's not going to just basically undo the entire process. The other thing is, I know this is only a rendering, and I'm not sure if anybody else did, but I think that it would be best if the bay doors are kept dark colored, same as the building, so it's not such a jarring look. Because I mean, that's a pretty heavily traveled area. You're driving by. I just think it's going to sort of get, if the building stays all sort of dark coloring, I think, you know, it'll be a little more eye pleasing than having those bright white bay doors sort of standing
Yeah,
out against the building.
We might suggest to make those like a shade, just a tad shade lighter than the building, just to kind of break it up. But
Yeah, that's fine. I just mean
yeah.
not white. I mean, that's just really kind of jarring. And then on the comment for landscaping, whether we ask for a plan or however we want to do it, but I do think that at this point, I think some landscaping out in the front that's done and maintained, I think would help. It is kind of a stock site when you drive by it, as it sits now. I don't think it would be a bad idea to have something. I don't know how everybody else feels, so I'll wait and listen and see what they think, but that's just where I come down on it.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm all set.
I think one of our tenants is a landscaper, so rather than go to a full landscape architect design, we can have a landscape plan brought for you for the next meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Delaney. Mr. Fratalia.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry. My microphone was off.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with the building or work. I'd like to see the doors a different color, of course. But at one time, there was a gas station on that property. Has that land been cleared by the gas, you know, in other words, the land is good without the gas or a problem? That test has been done?
All the tanks have been removed and all inspected, and the site is clean from that point of view, Mr. Delaney.
Okay, then I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Mr. Fratalia.
Chairman, I have a couple of questions as well. So it appears you're gonna have what, five bays or buildings, correct? Or one building but 5 bays, Mr. Hanley?
Four.
Yeah, so there's 4 new bays,
Right.
and then there's 1 existing bays. I think how it would work. Well, one on the side rather. I'm sorry. So there's 4 that would face East Street.
Yeah.
Then 1 on the small side of the far side.
Yeah. So now, are these gonna be rentals, or are they gonna be ownership, or how's that gonna work, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it could be rentals. You know, Mr. Cataldo does his own site work, has his own development company. He's gonna build it. He's gonna see if there's the market is there for it. So the possibility is that it will be rental, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with the site. I was by there today. I mean, nearly immaculate. I mean, he cleans it up real good. It's very clean and very organized.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the site, Mr. Hanley. I drive by it regularly as well. And I really echo Mr. Johnson's comments about landscape. I mean, that's almost like an entryway to Tewksbury.
Okay.
Once you get to that building, it opens up to the Lumber Lane area, the Carter Street area, the whole Demoulas development. So I would like to see some nice landscaping down there to really bring a nice effect to it as you come into the area and as you leave the area, coming on both ends of East Street. I mean, I think it's important that be, pristine and nice looking, and it'll just add and enhance the project you're trying to do there. And I'm all in favor of a project like this. We can use the commercial developments down there and the taxis as well. And I know I see a question on the water service that Mr. Hardeman brought up. So, I mean, have you thought about doing 5 individual water services there?
Yeah, so that'll be part of our conversation with DPW tomorrow. That's what they want to see, knowing and understanding that there's the potential that it could be rentals, right? If that's what they want to see, then that's what we're going to do. That'll be one of the items we'll discuss.
Great. I'm all in favor of this and look forward to it. The new plans. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Fidelia. Mr. Ryder.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other board members really asked majority of my questions. This one's an easy one, but I'll echo Mr. Fratalia. That is like an entryway coming in to the opposite side of Tewksbury off of 93, well-traveled with the rink there. A lot of people coming in and out of town. I think some nice landscaping there would be a real help to that area. Obviously, he keeps that facility immaculate. The property is kept up. I'm just hoping, seeing if these become rental, there'll need to be a tight watch on what is left outside and not become storage. I know it becomes difficult when they become rental facilities. Just if we can watch that as for the owner, if he does decide to become rentals, that's one significant thing that I'd like to see. And I will also echo Mr. Johnson's thoughts on the doors. So it's not such a, they don't pop out at you. I think it would be muted with a darker color.
Yep.
But other than that, I think it's great to bring some more commercial into town. Thank you, and look forward to the other plans.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. My only question is, and bless his soul, if Mr. Joseph Germano was here, he would know where I'm coming from on this. Will there be any mechanicals on the roof of that building?
What do you mean?
Heaters, air conditioners?
I don't think so. The plan would be to have just a heater hanging in the garage.
Okay. All right. Good. Point I was getting at when Joey was putting the car wash in, I said, you can have all the mechanicals for the car wash on the roof of the garage. That's all we're going to see. So how about putting a mansard roof around it to screen it? Oh my God, you thought it was going to kill
Yeah.
But anyways, he did it and it looked all right. Fine. Nice to see you, Joseph.
Nice to see you.
Mr. Chairman, we're well under the height, so if anything happened, we'd probably just run the masonry up a little higher to cover that.
Okay.
If we ended up in that situation.
Sure. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Kuko.
Okay.
Anybody else? Brian, anybody on the phone for this?
We have no callers, Mr. Chairman, but as normal, we are a little bit behind.
Okay, we'll wait about 30 seconds. So we have landscaping and what about signage? You gonna need a permit for signs?
Yeah, so one of Anna's comments was specific to a master sign plan, and I think the way we've done this in the past, and it's been suitable to the board, was that obviously we're going to conform to the zoning, and if we have any reason to come back and we trip those thresholds, we'd be back to address it, unless there's specific concerns specific to this use. I think that's probably how we prefer to approach it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hanley. We will take care of that when the time comes. Brian, still no one?
Still no callers, Mr. Chairman, and we are probably caught up.
Very good. All right, thank you. We have a motion to continue this until, Mr. Hanley, what's a good time for you? What do you think?
Yeah, you know what, I think that, it kind of depends a little bit on how my conversation goes tomorrow with conservation and DPW, but
Right.
as of right now, there's not too much. We could make these modifications and get it back to the town later this week. I'd like to try to hold the schedule for the 16th if possible.
All right. So, motion to continue this till the November 16th, I believe, right?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
7 o'clock is the
Right.
opening.
Yep. Very good. Motion to continue this at 7 o'clock on the 16th of November. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second? Do we have a second?
Second.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Mr. Fattalia,
Aye.
Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Thank you, and the chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda. Who is laughing?
Mr. Delaney was laughing.
Yeah. Next item on the agenda, item D. What is that?
That's on me.
Hello, Mr. Plunkett. How are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. David Plunkett for the applicant on agenda item D.
Thank you. Yeah, we figured out where the noise was coming from. Probably Mr. Hammer over there. I'm only kidding you.
I don't think so, Mr. Fowler.
You take everything so personal. Okay, motion to, next item on the agenda, item D, 181 Pine Street, Landplex LLC. We have a little bit of, well, we've gained some information from you, as you know, a tentative plan for moving the street up on Pine Street. That's one thing. The plan I got today didn't show where it was coming out on Pine Street, by the way. So I had to go online and then print it myself. But that was no fault of the office. So then we got an information that from Mr. The owner of the property, Mr. Gandella, that he wanted us to review that and look at it, and we'll do what we can with it. And but he still wanted to carry this forth on the 4-lot subdivision. So that confused me a little bit. So if Mr. Hammer or Mr. Plunkett would like to explain that, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sure as you and all the board members appreciate, this has had a fairly long history before the board. Really, a major issue that has arisen that has led to the potential difficulty of the build out of the lot is that we have a situation on Pine Street where the town has actually laid out the roadway, not within the bounds of the layout of the roadway, but there's actually an encroachment onto the applicant's property, the area where there would be entry into the site under the original OSRD 4-lot plan that was submitted, which had been reviewed on a number of occasions. After the discussion, the last meeting and several, some other meetings, questions, and there has been a looking afresh at the location and the potential to create a new design for an OSRD.
Mr. Chairman, can
Yes.
I just clarify something for
Go
the
right ahead.
minutes? So only you got a copy of that concept plan. It was submitted to Mr. Sadwick this morning. We didn't get hard copies, obviously, for the board. It wasn't clear if the applicant wanted that distributed to the board or not. I
we
printed
did
you
get
a
it in an
copy
email, though.
because we were in the we met today.
Yes.
So I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, if you could ask the applicant to provide a visual of that for the public, that would be helpful. So we're all on the same page.
Very good. Mr. Hammer?
Yes, Mr. Fowler, I can share a document.
All right.
Mr. Dorrington's allowing me to do that.
I believe you already have presenter privileges.
Yeah.
Yep, it looks like you have it.
Yep. So there's the plan that we've provided today. So, David, you want to continue?
Just as a wrap up of what we're presented tonight, or what is being shown here on the plan, was further inquiry relative to the potential views in other parcels of land, and creating an entryway that would be closer to the Whipple Road intersection. It would be a proposal in which there's a existing structure, a lot that would now serve as the entryway. There's also an A&R plan, which was a buildable lot, which would then also be incorporated into the design. And the end result would be a 6-lot subdivision, which for all intents and purposes, though, is a net of 4 lots because of the fact that we're taking the existing structure on Pine Street as it's set today, and using the A&R lot, which is a buildable lot, in order to address some of the questions or concerns relative to the board. Some of the issues that it addresses would be relative to the sightline issues that rose at the last with the last proposal, because we're not dealing with the encroachment of the roadway onto the applicant's land. That in this area here, Pine Street is actually laid out fairly close to the midpoint of the layout as it should be, as opposed to the other location where the roadway came onto the actual pavement of Pine Street, actually comes onto the land itself. And basically, as I say, it would address some of those issues. I know that Mr. Hammer has had discussion with Mr. Hardeman, the town engineer, relative to the layout of this way. And again, the end result is that we still end up with 4 additional lots in addition to what was there as an existing house lot in the A&R plan. And, the thought is that we're looking for the board to weigh in on the proposal as an alternative to the current proposal that's before the board. And, Mr. Hammer could give some more detail relative to the specifics of the layout. That's the intent, that this is a situation where, we're coming up with this as an alternative to try to address some of the questions that have come up in the discussions over the last several meetings relative to the proposal as currently situated before the board tonight. And I'd turn it over to Mr. Ham. Add any detail relative to the engineering of the site itself.
Thank you, Mr. Plunkett. Mr. Hammer?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Plunkett. So this new scenario of a layout of a open space residential subdivision would be the same general parameters as the other project, way that by including the other lot, our yield would yield us 6 lots. So essentially, as with the other project, we had 4 lots and 2 A&R lots. It would be the same similar project being a total of 6 lots. Ultimately the other 2 A&R lots would have been developed. If you'll notice where the proposed roadway is coming off Main Street, the existing pavement is now more aligned in the right of way, so that the site distance issue doesn't become an issue because of the location of the existing pavement being more in line with the right of way. The other part of this plan that is that the rounding, the 25-foot right-of-way rounding now can be fully laid out in this position, so that waiver would be not needed from the other proposal. Additionally, we were trying to come up with some alternatives relative to your comments, Mr. Fowler, as well as Mr. Johnson, to try to come up with some a creative solution to address these issues of whether we had to come off that existing spot came off of previously in our current proposal. We felt as though this layout was an alternative, as well as looking at, there was a comment that came in to bring an access road off of Whipple Road. And that also had its own challenges related to providing a roadway underneath the power line, where National Grid would also be looking to explore alternatives as well. So we looked at that potential of coming off of Whipple, and then that also brought us over to this location. This roadway also would help with the, even though we had sufficed the concerns of the town engineers, concerns about further evaluating the close proximity of the drainage system next to the property at 171 Pine. This project would also remove that detention basin that was currently to the east of 171 Pine Street, and then we would be able to pull that drainage system away from 171 Pine Street to help with that pending concern, which, even though we had satisfied the overall concern of the town we would provide an easement for the town pavement that is currently on the property where the current proposal was coming in off of Pine Street. So where the town's pavement is on our lot today, we could provide an easement to the town for that encroachment to help with that that future issue with that pavement on the property itself. So it would help solve that problem. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, we could still put a sidewalk on, even though the roadway is twice as long as the other roadway. We'll still put a sidewalk on one side of the road, and then just ask for a waiver for the removal of the sidewalk on the other side of the road. So that the planning would be supportive. And then this road would be a town road. This will meet all the requirements of a town road. I haven't gone over this plan with Kevin Hardeman. I know Mr. Plunkett thought that I did. Might have just been some confusion with a phone call, but I would go over this plan with Kevin Hardeman and walk through this plan. And I think that this plan will meet his approval on on a layout level as well as a drainage layout. And then this plan also provides more than adequate site distance, improved site distance with this relocated entrance.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hamer. I have a question for you, Mr. Plunkett. Based on the information that was given to us, someone must have a delay. I can hear my voice delayed and someone else's. Can you hear me? There you go. It's gone. Mr. Randella asked that we can still consider or still carry forth this permit request as a 4-lot subdivision, even though you've come again with another plan to with 6 or 7 lots. Could you explain that to me?
Oh, yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's a situation where this is an alternative to try to address issues that have been brought up by members of the board. This is a situation, if it's deemed viable, then this is the avenue that we would pursue. If it's not deemed viable, then at this point, we don't want to, or we're not looking to give up the application that has been before the board and through the review process to this point in time. My suggestion would be that this is something that, to get a definitive answer as to whether this is a viable proposal or not, whether that's something that we could get positive feedback from the board tonight. And then I believe the next meeting is what, the 16th?
Right.
That, actually I asked Mr. Hammond to weigh in on this, but my understanding is that we will retain the interest or retain our standing to move forward on the present 4-lot OSRD proposal before the board, until there is sufficient determination that this proposal is a viable proposal to move forward on. So, and I know, and I apologize if there was a misunderstanding, relative to the interaction with the town engineer specific to this plan, and then that would be my problem. That I misunderstood the extent of interaction with Mr. Hardeman at this point. do know that there was significant work done in a relatively short period of time to come up with this new, this new plan, this new proposal. So, I would defer then to Mr. Hammer relative to the time period, that would probably be necessary in order to get a sure feedback that this is a plan to move forward with. And then, but in the meantime, we would not want to, abandon the proposal that's currently pending.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Yeah, again, obviously, everybody else have their own thought, but from my perspective, I mean, we've had other projects where we've done quite a bit of moving things around and changing what was originally proposed. I think of sort of the corner of North Street and 133 as an example, where they started off and had a whole separate commercial building on there, and by the time we were done with it, they had less buildings and less, so from a how much change can happen, it's certainly something we've done. But more than that, I would make the argument that what was put out and what's before is a definitive subdivision and open space residential development special permit. In the naming, there's nowhere where it's talking about how many or exactly how it's going to look. It's just that is what's before us, that type of presentation. So to me, I think it would make sense to allow this to continue and potentially morph into what's before us now, partly because some of us are the ones who have directed it this way, or directed that we thought this might be better than what was originally proposed. So I think it would be unnecessary, and I'm not really sure useful to send the petitioner back to start an entire process all over again, just to get us where we asked them to kind of go anyways. That's just me. I mean, again, everybody else can get their own thoughts, but I just wanted to throw that out there, to see if we can continue on with what we're doing.
Well,
and Mr. Chairman, if follow up to Mr. Johnson's comment, again, that would be the type of determination that we would be looking for. And to say that the question was specific as to the 4-lot OSRD that was set forth on the application that the board has been looking at for these past several months. Again, that we would not be leaving that as our proposal until we get a proper feedback that this is the avenue to continue down, and if we can morph the current proposal into this, then certainly that would be the best way to go.
Thank you, Mr. Plunkett.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, if I can just pipe up for a minute. I'm looking at this plan, the new plan, and the new plan seems to address the entrance, which was a big concern, and it also shows that they're deferring the water away from Mr. Hopkinson's house. Weren't those the two big questions that we had? In other words, Mr. Hopkinson's lot is flooded by on its own, but this here plan seems to defer the water away from the property, and the entranceway is addressed. Weren't those the questions that we were asking in the very beginning? The two major questions. Okay, I'm all set.
Thank you. Having heard that and thought that, I'm sure we all have. My only question, and I'd like to take a minute to ask Mr. Hardiman and I don't expect him to give an engineering review on this because he probably just saw this today. But if this might, because of the diameter, because of the dimensions of the road onto Pine Street, with no, turns in it. A lot of the things that were causing a problem for the town have probably gone away. So if I may, is Mr. Hardeman available?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm here. Thank you.
Nice to hear from you, Kevin. What's your thought process on this now?
So assuming that the proposed road is laid out to the correct width with the radii required where it meets Pine Street,
Right.
and assuming that the proper sight lines can be provided, it seems to address the concerns that we had relative to the other roadway.
Very good, Kevin. Yep.
Right.
No, that's, I didn't know if you were gonna, I'd like that. I'd like that quick answer. I'd like that. Anything else that comes, I'm sure, I'm sure we haven't had a chance to study this for 181 Pine Street's problem, but hopefully that will address itself. Let's get back. Yes, Mr. Hammer.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Powell, thank you. One thing we've been trying to do with this open space residential subdivision in terms of the roadway was to go with a reduced pavement width. We'd like to propose a 22-foot wide pavement width in lieu of what would be required for 5 to 9 lots, which would be 26.
All right.
And it makes a big difference when you get into the engineering of it and the drainage and everything else. And I don't know if that's something possibly that Mr. Hardeman could weigh in or whether the board can discuss that.
Kevin, do you have any input for that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I believe it would be a 24-foot road required, because I believe this would require a new filing under the regulation, because it incorporates parcels that weren't incorporated in the original filing. So really the locus of the project has changed. And that may be something for town council to weigh in on, but I believe because you now are incorporating 181 Pine Street as well as what used to be, I believe, Lot 4 or Lot 4A, you'd need a new filing. And because the new subdivision regulations have been enacted, that roadway width would be 24 feet. That's my understanding.
What we're asking is that the board would be in support of the waiver to go to the 22.
And how, Mr. You know what? To be honest with you, I think this needs, as you said, Mr. Hammer, earlier this evening, when we started this process here on this subdivision, that you wanted to sit down with Mr. Hardeman and iron some of these things out. So we're not asking questions back and forth over the screen and not really getting a chance to address them properly. And I actually feel like we're putting you on the spot, and I don't want either one of you put on the spot. I want you guys to address it as you normally do, such as the inter-office meeting that you might have at the beginning of this process. But does that sound logical to you, Mr. Hardeman and Mr. Hammer?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd be more than happy to meet with Mr. Hammer regarding this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One other question. And again, I mean, it's going to be up to somebody else, I guess, to make, this is Mr. Johnson. Sorry.
Okay.
Obviously it'll be up to somebody else to make the final determination, but a thought came to mind that the project that we dealt with on 133, it was one that Mr. Plunkett dealt with. It's the one that had the smokestack in the back.
Yes.
I don't remember. But remember when we started that, we weren't dealing with one of the two pieces of property. But then when we realized we needed to try to straighten out where it met 133 when the road came out, we then did include that other side piece of property that was next to it because it was the same owner, and then included it in the project. And we didn't have to go back to square one for that one in order to add that in to what was being considered when we needed to adjust that roadway to make sure that where it met 133 worked. So, I mean, and it seemed to have been all right that time, you know, and that was a piece of property that wasn't originally what we were dealing with.
Right.
So it's going to be up to somebody else, I guess, to make a final decision if what we're proposing isn't allowed. But I think the petitioner is asking from us, and like we could at least give this portion of the answer, I think, tonight, unless we are prevented from going forward like this, that we'd be okay with it. And then they need to get another answer from somebody. It's somebody other than us.
Right.
But if we're not even okay with it, then it stops now anyway. So we can at least try to give them that answer if the board is okay with it, and then go from there.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. Let me, is Mr. Ryder here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I don't think we've heard from you on this. Have we yet today?
No, I'll be honest. I just read my email about 6 minutes prior to this coming up. I was not aware of this new proposal. From looking at it, what I see here, in just my opinion, I think this is a much better looking project. Absolutely. I think it solves a lot of the issues that us, the board, have raised. I think it's going to address some drainage. It will also address the town's paving issues, but I think that may be an easement by prescription under state statute. So I don't know if that's going to be necessary, but I think from just looking at it here, I think it's a much better project. And, you know, I think once we look at, get a better look at the drainage that they provide, I think this is going to help Mr. Hopkinson. And from there, I think it looks good so far.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. I would like to have we heard from Mr. Patalia?
No, Mr. Chairman, how are you? Thank you very much. I again just seen this plan. I actually like it a little better than the last one, but I do think we need time to review this. You know, and we're asking questions of Mr. Hardeman and so forth, and putting him on the spot. And I think you're right on as far as doing that. So I don't think this is the right time or place for that. So if we can hold off on that, I would like to review the plan again. And I do have a problem with Mr. Hammer already asking for a waiver when we haven't even got started. So looking on reducing the width of the roadway against the regulation, and here we are trying to make a better project than what we already had in the past with problems. So I hope we can resolve that before we get too far into this thing and do it correctly. So, but I do like the plan. I think it's a better working plan in my opinion, and I hope to see the plans in finalization down the road. So with that, I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Patalia. And I feel very strongly that this is a much better plan. I think it's a much better plan for a lot of reasons. I'm sure we'll hear from Mr. Hopkinson once we open up the phone. But I would suggest that, as we did earlier, that Mr. Hammer, Mr. Plunkett, Mr. Hardeman, or whoever gets together and irons this out to make sure that they're all on the same page. But then, having said that, if they are on the same page, and if this is something that's doable, I would like to get a feel for the board, just not cast in stone, but just a feel for the board, so we can say yay or nay on sending this further down the road so that Mr. Andela and company will know what plan they're going to be looking at. Because I don't want to be working with two plans, working with a 4-lot subdivision and a 7-lot, 6 or 7-lot subdivision. I'd like to find out what we're going to do, which one we're going to present, and then go from there. I would like this. I don't want to vote. I just like your feeling, yay or nay, on going forward with some further information for this planning board through the engineering to go forward. So, Mr. Johnson.
I'm fine with using this to go forward as one as this initial filing,
Right.
and just morphing it into this unless we are prevented from doing so.
Correct. Right.
Mr. Fowler, just one other thing I'd like to add,
Yes.
or a question that would then flow from that. In the event that the petitioner is precluded from us moving on with this morphed project,
right?
What, if any, options are there for the board to alleviate some of the redundant costs that the petitioner would have if they had to file this from the beginning again? I feel uncomfortable, or I would think it would be unfair for the petitioner to be forced to put forward all the same things that they've already done for the project we got this far in. And I only ask that in the event we cannot continue forward like this.
Yeah, I think. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I have two thoughts along that line. But I think Mr. Sadwick is the responsible party to let us know what we can adjust, what we can make whole, so it's not, as you say, redundant. But I don't. I'm concerned with just going too far, too quick. And I understand Mr. Andela has paid bills, I'm sure, but you know what? You're going to wind up with a 6 or 7 lot subdivision instead of a 4-lot subdivision. So it works for you. And that's my personal feeling. I knew that when Mr. Hardiman asked the question if it could come off of Whipple Road. You could be picking up a lot, but I know the powers that be were very did not like this entrance, this road, to be accepted as a town road or private road, whatever, with the concerns that there were at the entrance. So I think if we left it at the 4-lot subdivision, you would have been disappointed. All of us would have been disappointed. So, Steve, is anything else?
Nope. Like I said, I'm fine with going forward with this version.
Very good. Thank you, Stephen. Mr. Ryder.
Yeah, thank you. I like moving forward with this this layout. I just, as you stated, Mr. Chairman, moving forward with two different plans, I prefer to move forward with just one. I think it makes it cleaner, easier for the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Mr. Battaglia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Mr. Johnson as far as waiving some of the fees, but I do think it's a new plan. So I was going to suggest to you to speak to Mr. Sadwick about the idea and get his feedback. He is the resident professional here. So I think feedback from him and our attorneys as far as whether we can do this would be, a good effort going forward. So, but I do like the plan better than the other one, and let's see what happens. So, all set. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Battaglia. Mr. Delaney.
Yes, I feel as though we should go ahead with. I too don't want to deal with two plans, but I certainly like the new plan that is in front of me now. A lot better than the one that was there before. And I think it addresses all the concerns that we had, but we have to wait for the engineering thing to come out, you know, with Mr. Hardiman and whatever, but I think this plan really works for
Thank
me
you.
anyway. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Delaney. That's 4 of the 5 members, and I'll make it 5. I'm totally in favor of this plan over the other one, 100%. But I wouldn't call for a vote now to send this down to you, because I would like to make sure that Mr. Hardiman can converse with Mr. Hammer and make sure that we're on the same page on the plan that's going to be submitted. And then talk with Mr. Sadwick about the finances.
Mr. Chairman.
Whatever might, yes, Mr. Sadwick.
I'll give you it real quick. I
Yes.
think the filing fee can be waived by the board.
Okay.
You can, and you've done this in the past on repetitive petitions.
Mhm.
The one thing, if we have to re-advertise on a public notice, those costs aren't in the budget, so
Correct.
that would be just the advertising costs that we would probably want the applicant to pick up. Again, this project, town engineers pointed out that it's kind of expanded in scope as far as additional lots. I'll have a conversation with Mr. Plunkett and Mr. Andela tomorrow, and also talk to town council about how to handle
Okay.
the revised application.
Very good. Stephen, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Steve.
There's something I'm missing here, I know. Well, when we are not going to not have, we're not going to throw away the full lot subdivision until such a time as the gentlemen, the engineers get together, the town council, Mr. Sadwick. So there are questions to be answered, and I don't think it should take a whole heck of a lot of time. But I would hope that they could take care of this so that we could go further in this. And so before I go too far, Brian, is Mr. Hutchinson there?
He is, Mr. Chairman. I will unmute him right now.
Thank you.
He just has to accept my unmute request.
And Anna, I'm sorry for not bringing you into this. If there's anything that you can think of relative to this transfer of a plan, jump right in.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there is a 10% affordable housing unit requirement.
Okay.
So the bylaw states that for any 5 lots and over, which is 10%, so 0.5, and then that rounds up.
Okay.
So in this case, it would be 0.6%, which is rounds up to 1 lot, has to be affordable. And so, you know, the board has option of the fee in lieu for that.
Okay.
I believe.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. McGinty. Brian?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. It appears Mr. Hopkinson is still muted. I'm sure he can hear us if he'd like. He's still muted. He's in there. If he'd like to either hit 9 or call back in, either one should work.
All right. I just want to make sure he understands what's going on here, because he did send us a letter, and it took 2 weeks to, not to zing it, but 2 weeks to get it. So we were held up a week because of that. But you know what? In the long run, we wouldn't have had this plan a week ago.
Mr. Fowler, can I ask a question?
Yes.
To the petitioners, I'm thinking I probably know the answer, but have you had an opportunity to show the abutter this tentative alternative plan?
Mr. Hammer?
I don't believe so. This was,
Hold on a
Mr.
second.
Hammond can talk about his engineering.
Yeah, so we did not distribute, we only distributed the plan to Mrs. Paddock.
Okay. I only asked because, I mean, even if we get Mr. Hopkins on the phone, at this point, we're at a stall because we're going to wait on possibly with this. He won't even have seen it or be able to comment on it.
Right.
That was the only reason I asked.
No, I didn't expect him to comment or answer on the plan itself, but I just wanted to let him know what's going on. That's all.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else, Brian?
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello? This is the abutter that they wanted to speak to?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Here he is.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm trying to find out what you're even saying. Who am I talking to?
Bob Fowler.
Bob, hi. Yeah, I'm listening on the TV to try to figure out what you're saying. This is a new plan, and we need more information, I guess. Now, were you saying about, see, all this, I was disconnected here on the phone. Were you saying that you want to meet with me? Is that the deal or what?
Say that again. Meet with you?
Is that what you were saying to the?
No. We have a new plan that the entire planning board is in favor of. It looks great. It looks good for transition from this road out to Pine Street. And
Yeah, I see the plan on the screen right now.
Right. And someone said off the cuff that it looked like it addressed the problems of the water approaching your land. I'll hold out in abeyance. The engineers discussed that, and I don't want to get in. I don't want to get into that at this time.
No, you can't. You have no grades right there.
No, right. But I just wanted to let you know. I didn't want to leave you hanging, watching someone else's TV and trying to figure out what's going on with you. So, so we will hopefully be able to get information from the meeting with Mr. Hardeman, Mr. Hammer, probably Mr. Plunkett, and Mr. Andella, and then town council, Steve Sadwick, Mrs. McGinty, and whoever else on whether the legal aspect of this. And then we can, you heard this, Mr. Andella, the discussion about some of the fees that can be waived. So we'll work with you on this. And I think hopefully if our next meeting is in 2 weeks, hopefully we will be able to get some information. I don't expect a full set of plans, just what you have now with some, just some grades on them, Matt, if you would. That way we could tell what's going on. I know you have, you can superimpose this as you have on the plan you have here, but hopefully it'll work out fine.
That sounds good.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fowler, could I request a full-size drawing?
Who's this?
My eyes aren't as good as they used to be.
Well, when we get them, you'll get them.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. All right. Mr. Hammer?
Mr. Chairman, David Plunkett speaking.
Yes, David.
I wanted to address a comment that Ms. McGinty had indicated relative to the affordable housing component of the, suggesting that there be an affordable housing component to the proposal. When I was discussing the proposal initially, there is already a house there. There's a house in existence, and there is a buildable lot, an A&R buildable lot in existence. So the reality is, we're only getting a net increase of 4 watts here. And then, so our position would be that the net 4 would not trigger the affordable housing component, because we've got an existing home and we've got an existing buildable lot. So because if in fact the net 4 ends up with 1 affordable, then that basically destroys the potential of this layout. In reality, that would be 1 out of 4 being affordable, because we already have 2 in existence, and so I didn't want that to be left unaddressed at this point in time, just to be certain that the board's aware of our position relative to that component.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
It's Mr. Johnson. Well, I think we're going to have a problem there then, because if I'm not mistaken, we set that precedent when we had to deal with the lots on Astor Street. And we went round and round and round, but we ended up counting the house that existed there.
Right.
And in the number of lots, which, I mean, I'm not saying that if other members are deciding that they want to go a different direction, but the problem is that is what we decided when we did that Astor Street project. And we counted the house and the lot it existed on in the number of units that would be part of the subdivision as a total. So it triggered it for them, and they had to basically rework all their numbers and whatnot to figure out what worked and what didn't work for them. And I think they just ended up going less lots, so they wouldn't trigger it. But I'm the least likely one to have to be, to be pushing this thing. But I think that's the precedent we set, and to do something different this time would be odd.
I understand what you're saying, Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Go right ahead.
So, Section 7533 of the bylaw states that such applications shall require that at least 10% of the total dwelling units be established as affordable housing units in perpetuity. So that's the total dwelling units. It's not open to interpretation by each applicant. Application that we have. There's 6 lots here. 10% is 0.6%, and that's rounds up to 1 affordable housing unit. So it's not really something for the board to interpret. The bylaw 7503 is very clear on that.
Thank you, Mrs. McGinty. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right, thank you. Well, not to say that this puts a curve in this process, but I was going to say, in lieu of what conversation was had before, that when Mr. Plunkett, when you meet, I would hope that you could converse with Mrs. McGinty, Town Council, and Steve Sadwick, and whoever else would like to add any information to this, so a decision could be made by us. Because obviously we don't want to do anything that's wrong, and we don't want to lead the developer down the wrong path. So that's my feeling right now.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Just, again, we will have further discussion, because this will be crucial to whether this is viable or not.
Right.
We've got 2 lots here that already are in existence, one with a house on it and another buildable lot that we're using to try to address issues relative to the original location. And again, that original location, and a significant part of the problems that exist, are related to the fact that you have the encroachment of the townway onto the land. But we'll have further discussion, because again, this will be a crucial factor as to whether this is viable or not.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
I can make a comment. Mr. Fratelli here. I think it's time that we move this meeting and this discussion to a formal meeting down the road. Once we get more information, we're getting really deep here, I think, and I think it's time we move this forward and continue it to our next meeting with plans and so forth, and some decisions made by town council and Mr. Sadwick and so forth and so on. So
I don't disagree with you, Mr. Vitalia.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes,
It could be a pain, not a pain, but just to point out, in the event that the petitioner is pushed to file this as a separate petition, can we let them know now that if we're okay with waiving the fees? Because otherwise they're going to be prevented from finding that answer out in time to actually file it. Because we're not going to meet again between now and then.
well,
If it turns out they have to file, they'd have to put in the filing fee just to have us, make a determination later. If we tell them
Correct.
now that if that's the route they're forced to go, we're okay with waiving those waivable fees, I think it would make it just, streamline the process.
I'm in favor of that.
As
Is
am
that
I.
a form
I
of
just-
a motion, Mr.?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
a form of a motion?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Second.
Who made the second?
Mr. Delaney.
Mr. Delaney. Okay, there's a motion on the floor and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Vitalia,
aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Well, there you go. And now let's continue this till 7:05, Anna?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
7:05?
Yep, on the 16th of November.
Yes, right. All right. May I have that motion, please?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
We have a second.
Second.
On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
Mr. Fowler, me, aye. Mr. Fratalia,
Aye.
and Mr. Ryder.
Aye.
Very good. Well, thank you. I can't wait to get in town hall.
Yes, I agree.
Can I second that?
Yeah, right.
Now, the only problem is right now, then you'd have to be out by 9:30.
It's a good thing.
Steven, that's not a bad thing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fowler and all board members. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Plunkett. Okay, next item on the agenda, old business. Hearing none. New business.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask the board members to start working on their projected streets they may be interested in putting sidewalks on. And maybe at our next meeting, have some feedback from them as far as where they'd be interested in putting in sidewalks in the town. And in conjunction with the selectmen, if they want to jump in, we could ask them for their feedback as well, and put this together and see where we go.
Mr. Vitalia, were you here when I was talking about the selectmen?
Yes, I was. That's why I just brought it up, sir.
Okay, because I think from some of our perspective, to join some of the blank spots on Main Street would be better sold for everybody in the town. Not that our little bit of money is going to do a heck of a lot, but it will help.
Well, I suggest they put that in writing and submit it to Anna McGinty, our town planner, and we can review that at a later meeting, sir.
Yeah, well, it's probably going to be us doing that anyway, so
yeah,
that's fine. Anything else from the board members? Motion to
No, thank you,
adjourn is
Mr.
in
Chair.
order.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
On the motion, favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Vitalia,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Delaney,
Aye.
Mr. Ryder,
Aye.
and thank you. I will, just before we end, I know we already ended, but there is a plan. Hopefully it will work The selectmen, a couple of selectmen have talked to Brian and Jason about doing something to allow us, selectmen, planning board, whoever can be at town hall so that we can be there doing our part. We would be broadcast over the TV as we normally would be, and there would be no public there, and the petitioners would be facing us on a large screen, a large TV, I guess. But that's a plan that's trying to get legs, and hopefully it'll work. All right, that's it. And good night, everybody.